How is it possible to live in this completely and instantly connected world and still feel like something's missing? My theory is that our little addiction devices that we can't stop looking at are keeping us away from real face-to-face interaction. You know, the kind that leads to relationships and germs and laughing so hard that you can't breathe. So, as much as we might be trying to kill the real world, it ain't dead yet. And Ibis set out to prove it with the Ibis Migration. It's an offline gathering of more than 100 mountain bikers just outside of Mendocino, California, for a long weekend of rad riding and human-to-human connection. It's basically single-track summer camp. And when I say offline, I mean it. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, no electricity for most of the cabins. Mine had electricity because I needed to be able to charge up my camera stuff, but it was a small luxury. I got in on Thursday night, and about 3.5 hours away where I live, the temperatures were blistering. It was so hot. But up on the coast, it's always nicer. It's always cooler. Usually it's actually downright chilly at night. But oh man, the weather for this entire event was perfect. So for the first official day, Espresso Bob got things rolling bright and early at 7 a.m. with his espresso machine that apparently he drove out from Santa Fe, New Mexico just for this event. I don't drink coffee, but people seem to be loving it and raving about it and lining up early every morning to get a taste. And then breakfast. Oh man, every meal we had at the Ibis Migration was so good. They know how to feed mountain bikers. Total volunteer effort. Everyone came together to make for great meals every single day, every meal of the day. Okay, this is a mountain bike event. Let's get to the mountain biking. One of the awesome parts of the migration is that you can just show up without a bike and you can demo the latest Ripley, the Ripmo, any bike from the fleet that you want to get on, you will be able to access. And I talked to a lot of people who traveled in from out of state, and they all were happy that they didn't have to fly with their bike. So with more than 100 people at this event, there were a ton of group ride options. Everything from all-day Sufferfest, 4,000, 5,000 feet of climbing, to super mellow, super fun, slow-paced rides. So the first ride of the weekend was an all-day affair with Rue Harris here, and this man wrote the book on Mendocino mountain biking. He drew the maps. Before Trail Forks existed, he took the time to actually draw everything out and create a book, which I have, and it's just so cool to finally meet this guy. And even with the book, even with Trail Forks, this place is a maze, so it's really, really nice to have a guide showing me around. And Rue is not only a 73-year-old ass kicker out on the trails, he's also a member of the Steam Donkeys, which is the mountain bike faction of the Mendocino Coast Cyclists. Ibis loves giving back to the mountain bike community, and this migration event will raise about $3,000 for the Mendocino Coast Cyclists. So besides just getting to ride with Rue for the first time, I picked this particular ride because we were going to go by the original homestead of where Ibis was founded, where Scott Nickel originally started building frames outside of Mendocino. It was 1981 on this very spot. Okay, maybe not this very spot. It's a little anticlimactic, as Rue said, but it's still, I thought it was cool. I'd probably never go by this area or see it otherwise, so why not take in a little touristy action? So after that nice little bit of sightseeing, eventually we made our way to these 3 amazing trails called Endo, Ono, and Boiler, and they were ripping, and it was so cool to really get some speed and get scared a little bit and have some really good fun. Oh yeah. 26 miles and 3,400 feet of elevation gained later, our group rolled back into camp, and we were greeted with a little post-ride pizza and beer. And then a little bit later, after everybody had been showered up and ready to come back and hang out, Corey here was the mixologist and created a cocktail every night, a little special recipe that him and Scott came up with. And then a glorious dinner with the most moist roast chicken I've ever had. It was fantastic. And there was some other stuff there too. The next morning, I was up early to help cook breakfast, and it was actually a really fun experience. I have not done much baking or cooking. I can do a little bit here and there, but I was able to make this almond flour cake thing that was dessert for breakfast, and it came out so good. I was so proud. But then I also helped with the oatmeal and totally burned it, and don't bring up the oatmeal. I wasn't really interested in doing another all-day crazy ride, so I went down to the little meadow where we had a skills clinic, and Asa from Babob, you may have seen her on YouTube in her manual machine, taught a really, really cool skills course. And the way she taught it made it very accessible for all abilities. Most of the riders were pretty novice and just learning to get their front wheel off the ground, but I was able to actually get some lessons and get some practice in, something I never do, and really actually feel comfortable, and actually got up into a manual on my own a couple times. And of course, we had to play with the manual machine because it is a cool little teaching tool. It's not the end-all be-all for learning manuals, but man, it's fun. By the end, Asa had everybody going off this little drop here, and it was super cool to see the progression from starting with barely getting the wheel off the ground to everybody coming off this drop and looking decently confident. And then for lunch, just a little something out of the old wood-fired pizza oven. And they just kept bringing more and more of it, so it'd be rude not to. So after 5 or 6 slices of pizza, it was time for an afternoon ride, and I had been hearing about this little swimming hole that was a little more off the beaten path. There were 2 swimming holes, one that was close and that a lot of people went to, and then one that was a couple miles away that was a little harder to get to. But of course, we had to work up a sweat first, so we did a big climb up to the top of this trail called Moto, and then we had a nice, big, leafy, straight down descent. Ha ha! Oh, yeah. Then we made it to our awesome little destination. The water was not even that cold. There's something about riding your bike to a swimming hole that is so damn cool. And once again, as dinner drew closer, we had this happy hour type thing going with wine and cheese and grapes and pears and cocktails and all kinds of stuff just to kind of get everybody socializing and hanging out and getting our bellies full. And we were ready to eat once dinner came along. They made this awesome pork loin, all the fixins, just so much good food. I know I'm getting hungry now. And then after this, they brought out this cake thing that was just amazing, and I just ate and ate and ate, and it felt so good. As the food began to digest and we told each other stories of our day, I thought to myself, is that a branding iron in the fire there? Oh, yes. Yes, it was. And I had a really fun time practicing on pieces of wood, trying to actually get it. I never really got a good one, but I did have the most practice out of anyone there. And what a nice little life lesson this was. There were so many people standing around trying to give me advice. They'd never done this before. They'd never actually picked up the brand and tried to put it on a flat piece of wood. Get out of here. I'm the one holding the brand. I'm the one in the arena. On the final morning, I was up and at 'em early again for breakfast duty. I was tasked with making a cornbread thing, and I really don't like cornbread with like actual corn kernels in it, so I never actually tasted I never tasted it, so who knows if it was good or not. I didn't hear anybody say if it was good or bad or indifferent, so my days as a chef might be over. Correction, my days as a cook. I was just a cook. The chef is the guy in charge, the person that's putting everything together, that's managing everyone, all these volunteers, and that man was Phil here on the left, and he did an awesome job keeping the kitchen together and actually getting some really, really good food out of it every day. And Phil can't get all the credit. Phil did breakfast and lunch, and then Rob Hunter did the dinner, so that amazing chicken, that was him. For the final ride of the long weekend, I went along with Steam Donkey Phil, not to be confused with Chef Phil here, and he guided me around on like a 15-mile, 2,000-foot ride, something a little more mellow. So it didn't take long before I stopped calling him Steam Donkey Phil and started calling him Iron Will Phil. We're on this giant climb, just kept going and going. I'm like, surely he's going to stop here and want to take a break, because I sure as hell would like to stop and take a break. But I didn't say anything, and he didn't say anything, so we just kept on cranking all the way to the top. Oh my God. This trail is called Sweet Pea, and I kept hearing people talk about it because they're like, oh man, it's like a 5-mile downhill. Well, it's a 5-mile flat to downhill. So very easy, very cool, very accessible. Like I would love to take anybody who's just starting out mountain biking down this trail so they could get the feel of like, whoa, okay, this is what it's like, because there's not a lot of high consequence. It's just a really fun little zip through the woods. What a perfect way to get a little social media detox and to get away from our screens and get connected to real people in the real world by shredding some awesome trails. This was a perfect little grassroots event. The volunteers were great. Ibis was great. You don't have to be an Ibis rider to come, but I'm guessing by the end of this, you're like, yeah, my next bike will probably be an Ibis. Thank you so much to Ibis for sponsoring this video and letting me tell their story through my eyes and seeing firsthand how their money goes back to trails and actually creates some really, really cool opportunities for local mountain biking. Thanks for watching, you guys. I'll see you on the trail.